Good morning, colleagues. We've got a lot to discuss.
You accepted £600 worth of seats in the VIP box for a Sabrina Carpenter concert. Not got much to do with government, has it? And then a few weeks after that, £276 worth of free theatre tickets. Why don't you pay for your own tickets? Don't you see how this looks? A Chancellor who's making these kinds of cuts to working people and poor people accepting free tickets. It looks awful. Are you going to accept any more freebies?
Well, I do recognise how it looks to people. Since I've become Chancellor, my life has changed a lot.
The mask is slipping. Rachel Reeves is on the ropes, and the press is not holding back. 250,000 people pushed into poverty. 50,000 children left to struggle. And what's her response? A flimsy analogy about a Saturday job.
If you have a 16-year-old and you say, do you know what? I'm not going to give you so much pocket money. I want you to go out to work. And then the OBR comes and does an impact assessment and says, your child is going to be worse off. Well,
this is the brutal grilling that exposes a chancellor cornered, dodging, deflecting, and drowning in contradictions. As the government slashes benefits while defending tax breaks for the wealthy, the real question remains who pays the price. Tonight, we break it down, every denial, every evasion, and the cold, hard facts they don't want you to hear. Stay locked in. This is political accountability at its fiercest.
That we're going to do things differently. We're going to tell the truth, even when they are hard truths.
You accepted £600 worth of seats in the VIP box for a Sabrina Carpenter concert. Not got much to do with government, has it? And then a few weeks after that, £276 worth of free theatre tickets. Why don't you pay for your own tickets? Don't you see how this looks? A Chancellor who's making these kinds of cuts to working people and poor people accepting free tickets. It looks awful. Are you going to accept any more freebies?
Well, I do recognise how it looks to people. Since I've become Chancellor, my life has changed a lot. It's a privilege of my life to do this job, but with it does come security concerns that I'm not able, like I was in the past, just to buy tickets for a concert and sit with my family. And so, for security reasons, I did take tickets in a box.
if you have a 16-year-old and you say, do you know what? I'm not going to give you so much pocket money. I want you to go out to work. And then the OBR comes and does an impact assessment and says, your child is going to be worse off. Well, they're going to be worse off if they don't go and get themselves a Saturday job. But if they do go and get themselves a Saturday job, they'll probably be better off and they probably might enjoy it as well. Now, I know that's not the right analogy, but there are a lot of people who have a disability but who are desperate to work.
Within weeks, you could see the fiscal space that you have eroded. That will necessarily start a conversation about how you, again, return to a position where the rules are going to be met, and that will return us to a conversation about tax rises. The speculation, Chancellor, has already started. Do you recognise, because you've only left us with a small amount of fiscal space, that there will be a conversation about tax rises and that there will be a cost to that conversation? People may be deciding actually to put off investments, to put off spending, because they are worried about the potential tax rises that could come in the autumn.
We wiped the slate clean on the fiscal mismanagement and the fiscal fiction of the previous government last autumn. And we did have to introduce a number of tax measures then. But I was determined yesterday that we continue to meet the fiscal rules without further increasing the tax burden. And that's what I was able to achieve yesterday.
Just come back to the headline numbers. These are your government's numbers. 250,000 people could be pushed into poverty. Can you rule out that none of those, despite your government's own numbers, will be pushed into poverty?
I am absolutely certain that our reforms, instead of putting people into poverty, are going to get people into work. And we know that if you move from welfare into work, you are much less likely to be in poverty. That is our ambition, making people better off, not making people worse off. And also the welfare state will always be there for people who genuinely need it. And when people come up for their reassessments for personal independence payments, we want them to be seen by a trained assessor. Before the pandemic, people were seen face face-to-face 7 times out of 10 for those assessments. It's now 1 out of 10. I want people with sickness and disability challenges to see a face-to-face trained assessor so that they get the support that they need, whether that support is with payments from the state or, actually most significantly, support to get back into work and to stay in work.
On your own impact assessments, you say that 250,000 people will be put in relative poverty by 2029, 50,000 of those children. Those are your own figures.
Charlie, those figures are based on no changes in terms of people going back into work. And we know that the £1 billion that we put in yesterday to personalised, tailored support to support people back into work will make a difference. So we're going to work with the Office of Budget Responsibility, the official forecaster, over the summer, ahead of the budget in the autumn, to show how those plans can make a difference.
It's got to be addressed, hasn't it? We're talking to a former Home Affairs Minister this morning who said you're the weakest link in Cabinet. How do you change that?
Well, the Cabinet are working together on our plan for change. I'm tasked with growing the economy, and the OBR forecast that the economy will be bigger in this Parliament than it previously would have been. But the changes we've made to secure our public finances also mean record investment going into our NHS, which has enabled us to bring down waiting lists. The money that's going into schools is enabling us to roll out free breakfast clubs in all primary schools. We've found £2.2 billion for defence next year, taking defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, something the Conservatives promised but never delivered. So by securing our public finances, by making some of those difficult decisions on tax, welfare and on spending, we are able to invest in the things that I believe are our nation's priorities, and we'll get on continuing to do that job.
All governments make choices. You didn't have to make these cuts. You didn't have to cut the winter fuel allowance. You could have made other choices. You could have, for example, taxed people with £10 million of assets 2%. That would have brought in billions of pounds a year, yet you chose to penalise poorer people.
Well, in the budget last year, we raised taxes to the tune of £40 billion. That was primarily on the wealthiest and also asking businesses to pay more through national insurance. But we got rid of the non-dom status. So if you make your home in Britain, you'll pay your taxes here. Put VAT on private schools.
Well, that's backfired, hasn't it?
What has?
But VAT on private schools, that's actually costing you money, according to the BBC today.
Oh, no. The Office for Budget Responsibility and the Institute of Fiscal Studies say that it's bringing in more money than they originally anticipated. So those changes, increasing capital gains tax and tightening up the inheritance tax rules, do mean that the wealthiest are paying more into the tax system.
Chancellor, is there anything you would be prepared to give up, to do, to make the White House maybe treat the UK in a different way? We were just discussing around the table with Lizzie the possibility of maybe scrapping the digital services tax. Would that be on the table? Are there other levers you could potentially pull? Can you take us inside the room and give us an idea of what is being discussed and what is on the table at this point to maybe see the UK get a different treatment to the one we are potentially going to see meted out to the European Union?
Well, at the moment, there are tariffs on the flow of some goods between the UK and the US, and those tariffs work both ways. I would like to see tariffs between countries fall. So, of course, we're having those conversations. Tax policy is one for national governments to decide, and we'll continue those conversations with the US.
And you've identified that some of the mental health reasons for people to be on these benefits are an issue, and you feel that those people would be benefited if they're in work, and I think we can all see that. However, we also know that the mental health service is woefully not there for those people. So, where is the money going to go for that? How do they get the help back? I think people just can see the damage but can't see the vision.
Look, I think we all know that the last few years, the pandemic, it has had a toll on people's mental health. And that's why, as a government, in the autumn, at the budget, I put more than £20 billion into the National Health Service, including increasing the support for things like cognitive behavioural therapy, mental health support, so that it isn't the Cinderella service of the NHS anymore.